Video Chicken Live. We are live. It is February 9th. We have a guest today that I'm very excited about, so we are in for a treat. Let's get it started. Here he comes. It's time for Video Chicken. Don't hit the lights. What is wrong with you? To my left, co-host, chickenista, chicken expert, Kristen. Today is going to be an awesome show. Look at Goosebumps.
Yeah. Coyotes are everywhere.
What's going on, Kristen?
Oh, I was just getting my chicken poop necklace on.
Can I get some? Someone's already pooped. Ingrid's like doing her job. Ask and you may receive. Ingrid is on it.
Don't blame it on me.
Oxygen is the solution to foul odors.
I just felt it on my back. It's warm and oh, God.
I knew I was going to have serious problems that, like, the coop remained that much better than the house forever.
The coop is beautiful, by the way. I'm not trying to plug your products by any means.
Please do.
Lipstick, give me a makeup kit. You know, I'll be nice and pretty for the crows.
Oh, so let's pull out another chicken. This is like a magic trick. Up to 1 o'clock already. Oh my God. We have a new Ingrid.
Memo. I missed the memo.
Know a lot of people who do raise rabbits alongside their chickens.
Why would you wait till the last minute to pull out your homework?
Have we met before?
Yeah, that's a good one with the cords and everything.
This falls right off, and he regrows a new one the following spring.
Calm down, Matt. Calm down.
Why?
This is a really interesting show.
It's see?
Yeah.
My fault. I love it, Cindy. You just earned yourself a shirt. I love that.
Yes, Matt, you are right.
I had no idea what to expect when we opened up that box, and this is why we love what we do.
That's my goal, is to really bring people together through chickens.
The power of chickens.
So-
What's going on, guys? Yes, we are live February 9th, 2024. Did I hear a little bit of squeaking going on?
I did too. I heard that.
Make me a little nervous. Make sure we sound good. Boy, today's not the day to have any follow-ups with
How are you feeling today?
technology.
Foul up.
Am I wrong? That was good, right?
That was a good one.
So many good puns in the chicken world.
I'm feeling better. I'll be honest with you. As always, I was a little worried about this morning because there's so much going on.
You say that every week.
Is it not? You're real busy, I guess, when there's people standing out in the lobby waiting for a job, and it's our non-production day. You're like, it's busy around here. I'm like, this is our slow day. But no, I'm doing good. Yourself, Kristen? How are we doing today?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for showing up to the emergency meeting today.
Yeah, I did have a coyote in the yard this morning.
Oh no.
That's twice now.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
We need to have that show about the electric wire.
And set it up at your house?
Yeah,
Okay. We can do that.
like pronto.
You're getting a free electric setup. That's what you're doing here. Very smart on your part. Ingrid is here, as
Yes.
always. How are you doing today, Ingrid?
I'm okay.
Just okay?
It's been a morning.
So, Ingrid made a huge announcement right before the show. 'Cause
I
was
heard
like,
all the cheering when I went to go get coffee.
I think it was
What'd I
only
miss?
I think it was only me cheering. And what's funny about what
Well,
Ingrid
you sound
said,
like a crowd.
I hear that a lot, is actually our guest today is not just any guest. I was reading into her profile. Is that what you would
We
call
have a
this?
background check?
Oh yeah, I ran a background check. Wow. So can't wait to start telling you about today. But she also comes from Chewy, and Ingrid said that Chewy is ready to start Monday morning.
Well, they say they're ready to start.
Then we go. It's Monday after the Super Bowl. There's no better time to get started with another.
Yes.
Chaos.
I wanna see everything before.
Get the mic in front of you. We want to hear you.
I need to have eyes on it first.
So you're gonna be here Tuesday morning because we're not here Monday morning.
Yeah, I heard that little tidbit too from
The
Nicole.
Super Bowl hangover day?
So we just hired someone, thank God, and we're like, yeah, we'll see you Monday morning. And Jesse, thank God, he goes, well, we're not here Monday morning. I was like, oh yeah, and he's like, what do you mean you're not gonna be here? Like, who works the day after the Super Bowl?
Oh my gosh!
Apparently
but
you're making all of us work.
Yeah, you gave me stuff for taking off Friday after Thanksgiving, which like every
Yeah,
employer.
who takes off Black Friday? We got work to do.
Everybody takes off that. Like
No.
employers always give that day off.
You should just be quiet. It doesn't make you look good.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
What doesn't make me look good?
Never mind. I'll tell you later.
What? No, tell me now.
Making your employees work the day after Thanksgiving.
Who said I was?
Wait. Don't get defensive. Okay,
I'm not getting
let's
defensive.
keep
I'm
going.
asking a question.
Let's keep going. We actually, for the record, didn't have to work this year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But the previous year we did.
I was going to say, I think we even paid for it, but no, that was Christmas and Christmas Eve. Anyways, so Chewy's going to start Monday. The office has the option to shut down, but production will be shut down because it's the day after Super Bowl. That is the day that most people call in sick, is the day after Super Bowl. And we have our company Super Bowl party, which you guys are going to.
Is that a documented thing that is the day, or is that just like a Maddism?
Maddism.
Okay. Just want to know. Just wanted to get the
We're in
clarification.
Matt's world.
I know.
Yes, you are. All right, so today,
I've been really looking forward to today.
So here's the thing about today is we have a veterinarian in the house, okay? And not just any veterinarian. We have an avian expert that has done some really cool stuff.
Lots of
Look,
cool
I got
stuff.
goosebumps.
Yeah, it's like
One of 'em-
amazing.
I think it's just because it's cold. In
One of them, it is pretty cold. One of them, I'm so jealous. We need to get this done. I want to write a book.
Oh yeah, she's got a
The
book.
art of coop building, or whatever it's going to be called. Someone's going to steal that from me now. She's from Yale University. When we think of Yale, I know Ingrid's going to get mad at me, but I got some very interesting questions. I would love to know if it's true or not about Yale. When we think of Yale, what comes to mind? Yeah, I know you guys weren't going to catch that one.
She went to Tufts for her veterinary school.
But hold on, we're getting to Tufts, but Yale, the Bonesman?
That's pretty cool.
I cannot wait to find out if there's any experience with the Bonesman. We've had presidents that go to Yale. So we have Dr. Laurie Hess, who is a veterinarian, and she specializes with avian, right?
Avian and exotic.
And exotic, which is also really cool because I love
You
the
love your
exotic.
lizards and stuff and your snakes and
Well,
such.
I have a question about that, but I'll hold it.
Okay. You have a question about what, though? Whether or not she's...
Why do we have exotics like pigeons? Pet pigeons and bunnies are considered exotics, but they're
Great.
really not exotic.
Well, I don't know. Great question. So here's where behind the scenes at Carolina Coops, what's the first thing we do? We got to Google the definition of exotic so we all get on the same page.
We'll ask her.
Yeah, so we're going to have Laurie coming in here in maybe about 5 minutes. I hope you guys are all doing well. Thank you for being here. Again, we are live.
Oh, she's got a hard stop, so.
Oh,
I didn't
we
know.
gotta
When
get
were you going to
going.
fill me in on the hard stop?
Well, if you were here at the pre-meeting, you would have heard
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry. I'm running a business. Trying
well,
to
I'm running a
plug
show,
holes.
so
And I'm just here for the fun of it.
Okay, so we should probably go ahead and get started then. So what
Yes.
time is...
she's got to be out of here by 1. You can't go having her on like
and
for
we-
hours and
Okay,
hours.
so 1 p.m. That's a good hard stop. 'Cause that's
I've
usually
got a
when...
hard stop today at 5 p.m.
No, you don't.
I have a hard stop at 1:05.
No, you guys don't. All right, so we'll get...
Boy, that was easy.
We'll get Dr. Laurie Hess in here. Now, here's the other thing that I love about having a vet in. I would like to think this is the end-all, be-all, buck stops here. I don't care what everyone says. I don't care what their opinions are. I don't care what they read online. If a vet says this, like we've done with Dr. Crespo, and I think we're going to do again today, it's like there's no arguing with that. So I can't wait because God knows. And I tell people, do your research. But I feel like, and I hope Dr. Laurie's going to say the same thing. She's like, oh my gosh, Matt, you won't believe what people read. And then they bring their pets in. It's like, oh God, I got to re-educate them and whatnot. We've seen that to be very true with chickens. Yes, Matt,
Yes,
we
because
have.
there's so much information and there's so much bad information.
Yeah, it's hard to sort through it all.
So, brought to you by Carolina Coops. Live today is Dr. Laurie Hess. Let's go ahead and bring her in from the green
Okay,
room.
you got to squish together.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Which way?
I'm gonna put
Well,
her
we got to
over.
come into the middle. There she is. Good morning or good afternoon, Dr. Laurie. How are you doing
Scoot in a
today?
little bit more.
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. We might just have to tweak her audio a little bit. But where are you sitting right now?
I'm sitting in Connecticut.
Okay, so it's East Coast. Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being here. I did want to go down and do this intro because I think it's important for people to realize you're pretty cool.
Smart and cool.
You're pretty cool.
So you've been on Animal Planet. You've been on CNN. You've been on the CBS Morning Show. I am so jealous. You've been on the Martha Stewart Show. 48 Hours, Fox and Friends. We were just on Fox and Friends. I know some people kind of hated us for it, but whatever. Not sure what Windy City Live. I gotta believe that's
in-
Chicago.
Yep. And
Yeah, go
the
Bears.
LA.
48
Dude,
hours.
And then you've also written some
Morning
books. So I have to believe when it comes to today, we're a chicken show, so we're gonna really talk about chickens. At least I'm gonna try to. I ain't gonna lie to you.
I know.
I got some. I mean, my
You've
Maine
got some
Coon.
reptile.
Oh my gosh!
habits,
But
and I got some.
Hit me, whatever you want to ask me.
I got
And my heart stop ended, so I can stay as long as you want me to chat.
Oh, I don't know if you. I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah,
do
I don't know
that.
if you might want to wait it on that one, Laurie.
Yeah.
so well, so Video Chicken Live. God, thank you
Has
so
no hard
thank you
stop.
so much for being here. Oh, also, and I can't remember if I mentioned this. Dr. Laurie is a customer.
That's right.
I am.
There is. I mean, I love every customer.
Pending customer. She hasn't gotten her coop yet.
But
Yeah,
it's,
she's a
it's
customer.
she's on the list.
Yes.
She's ready to
We're
go.
building as we speak.
Yes, that's right. There is no better compliment as far as I'm concerned when a veterinarian, especially with these credentials, says, "I choose Carolina Coops. I choose them because of what I believe in, my practice, what I've learned was best for the animals. This is why I'm going to choose Carolina Coops." So there is no better compliment. So thank you so much for that.
How did you
Absolutely.
choose Carolina Coops for your coop? How did you
Believe it
hear
or
of us?
not, well, I knew of you, and then when we were all cooped up during the COVID pandemic, I have to say, Matt, I watched every single video you have ever made. I made my family watch. We just sat there and watched, and I thought, like, this is what I want to do. Where we didn't even own the house that I'm sitting in right now, where my coop is actually going to get shipped to at that time. But I knew that I wanted to have chickens. I treat them all day long, but I didn't have my own at the time. And so after many iterations of the coop, I'm happy to say we now have a house and a place to put it, and hopefully it's coming soon. So
That's
just
right.
really excited. You guys do things the right way, and I really wanted to do it the right way and keep my chickens healthy and happy.
Well,
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
so much for that. So that's obviously, again, this is brought to you by Carolina Coops. So we might boast a little bit about what Carolina Coops does, but this show is about, I want to educate people, and that's been our philosophy. Educate the customer on chickens, and I'm not saying we're the end-all, be-all, but we are. Let's face it. But I want to back that up, and that's why we do this show. And I always want to challenge people. Think a little bit about what did chickens do before coops were invented. Talk to the veterinarians, read some books, be careful of what you are reading and watching online. There is some good information, there's some bad information. I like to think Video Chicken Live is probably the best source of information, but we bring it to you. So everyone that's listening right now, this is your time. If you have any questions for Dr. Laurie Hess, now is the time. A little pro tip, type question if you could, so that we see it, because we see all the comments coming in, which are so important. If you don't have any questions, please give us a wave, say hi, let us know where you're watching from, and do everything you can to promote the show, especially by sharing the show. So again, let's, Laurie, thank you for being here. And where would you like to start since you are running the show?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, that's you.
So let's go right on with a question. 'cause
Okay.
We have it from Don.
Yeah.
Don's asking, what is the best way to treat bumblefoot?
It really depends on how bad it is. So when it's really, really mild, you can clean off the bottom of the foot, and you want to increase the amount of bedding you have, because bumblefoot often occurs as a pressure sore, basically, when you don't have enough bedding and the foot is constantly in contact with a hard surface. Bumblefoot is something, though, I will say that if it gets bad enough, you do need to see a vet, because often it needs to be surgically dealt with, and, the dead tissue needs to be taken off, and they can get infections, not just pressure sores, but actually infected pressure sores. So sometimes you do need to have some surgery done, some bandaging done, and sometimes even antibiotics. So it just depends on how bad it is.
All right,
I'd recommend, if it gets bad, see your vet.
So I am so glad you started with that question, because I can't believe there's not one in here. Don't say
It's right
it.
there.
Don't blow it. Can I please have it
It's right
in
next
my
to Kristen.
possession?
It's next to Kristen,
Kristen.
on the floor.
Please. Oh, there it is. I knew we had one in here. Dr. Laurie, I would like to show you something that came to us as a recommendation from another avian vet. And a little messy in here. We get a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
Here is an example of a roost bar that we love, our customers love, and it's to help prevent bumblefoot. And I love something you just said, pressure sore, because I've never heard it put that way. We've always been taught, at least I've always read, that a lot of it is because of them constantly working, scratching. There's a high probability their feet are going to get a little rough and it might get cut. And from that cut, if it can't heal, it can get infected and create that staph infection. And one of the reasons for a roped wrap roost bar is to help that cut to heal, because they're not on a flat, hard surface, that there's air to get around there. But a pressure sore, this will help prevent that consistent pressure where we're going to have some irregularities. Would you also agree with that statement?
Absolutely. And I do like, and I will say for my own coop, which is coming soon, I have ordered those roost bars. I like the idea that there's air circulating under the foot so that when there's moisture, if it gets, if it's very humid out, that you don't have that constant moist bottom of the foot touching the perch. And believe it or not, I mean, just you can imagine that if you have a really bad sore on the bottom of your foot, we actually create these little donut shaped bandages. So we have the sore in the middle, right in the metatarsal pad as it's called, and then we have a donut shaped bandage around so that the center of the donut actually has air right there and it's not even in touch with anything. So this is a nice way to start, to try to prevent it from happening, or if it's early on, if it gets really bad, you actually have to lift the whole foot away from the perch. But that's great.
Yeah, I'm real big on prevention. So I think we just got another vet on record, I hope, approving this idea. Because, here's the thing. And we got some announcements to make, and this is one of them. That I have always said for years, I don't want to sell something to a customer that they don't need. And rope wrap roost bars, we've always said, you don't really need it. You can just do a regular roost bar. But what we've learned, and what I mean by regular is just a flat piece of wood, right? And I'm sure 90% of people still, that's what they do. But it is important to have prevention. And these have become very popular, that we have made a decision once we switch to, we got to make sure we talk about this other material again, acre, that every chicken coop is now going to come with a rope wrap roost bar. And I flipped on it because why not have prevention? You know what I mean? So that is coming, and I'm so glad to hear that. So that was a great start right there, Ingrid.
Okay, good. We have more questions.
Yes, fire, keep them coming.
Okay, so Catherine asks, is there any truth to the benefits of adding apple cider vinegar, hot pepper flakes, or oregano to chicken feed?
That's a great question.
We get this one.
And I know there are 3 different things for 3 different treatments.
Yeah, there are different ideas. I mean, apple cider vinegar we use a lot, whether it's with chickens or even with parrots. It can basically change the pH of the water, and it actually can prevent some yeast infections from going on. It's something that we use all the time. I mean, it certainly, as long as your chickens will drink it and they like it, you don't want to deter them. So you have to kind of watch and make sure that they're still drinking. Hot pepper flakes, I mean, there's all kinds of theories about that, and I'm curious to see what you guys think. Matt, what do you think about that?
I am a less is more, to be honest with you. Yeah. Even with the apple cider vinegar, which, I might flip on this as well, because it seems like I am taking 8 of those pills every day. I don't know what happens when you get older, but apparently my pH is off. And
your pH has always been off, Matt.
Yeah, you're a little saucy too.
It helps with my heartburn, which...
Or does it?
No, it does. Oh, God,
okay.
Yeah. So, and I guess that's a better way of helping to prevent heartburn. I guess that's what happens when you get old. I don't know. I thought it was just the new pizza down here. So I have become more of a fan about apple cider vinegar. But here's what I've seen, and here's why I want to talk about this. I feel like some people think more is better, and they overuse it. Mm-hmm. And we even had the worst case scenario, which I can't say this enough, especially with our heated water systems or with the de-icer. And we got to stop saying heated, because it's just meant to thaw, but it doesn't mean the water should get warm. Well, there are heaters out there where the water's getting up to like 120 degrees, and she kept dumping apple cider vinegar in there, and it was just growing and clogging everything.
It was fermenting.
I couldn't figure out what was going on with her system until I finally went out there. As soon as I put my hand on the rain barrel, I was like, oh, this ain't right. Dr. Laurie, can you tell us if we have our most common size water container that we sell is 50 gallons, and it can fluctuate depending on if you're collecting rainwater or not or whatever. Give us your recipe if you could. If someone wanted to use apple cider vinegar, they're just adamant, got to use it, and I got 50 gallons. How would you go about with the thought process of using apple cider vinegar in the water?
How much?
Well, I will say I generally agree with you. I'm not a big fan of adding anything to water. And there's all kinds of theories about all these different things you can add, but they're not, unless you're changing your water really, really frequently, things can grow. And things can get clogged. And a lot of times animals don't like what you add to the water. And even if you're well-intentioned, and you actually deter them from drinking the water. So I think, if you absolutely have to add it, I have to look up. I don't know off the top of my head because I don't use it that much, but it's just a really small amount. And the thing is, if you're using like the rain barrel system where, you have water in there for a long time, I don't love the idea of putting it into the barrel because it's going to sit in the barrel and it's not like you can, take that out quickly. So depending upon your water system, I think it's difficult. I mean, if you had still water that you were going to change every day, because I think you should be changing it every day if you're going to add something in there. I don't think it should be kind of recirculating like that. And certainly, like, I love the rain barrel system, and it's something that I want my own coop to have, and I'm planning on doing that. And having fresh water that way is great, but putting something in that's going to recirculate that might grow, bacteria or anything like that, I don't think I would do that.
So maybe in a secondary water. If you do,
if you need to treat,
I mean, what is the point? Okay.
Or maybe not.
Because a lot of people think they have to have the vinegar as a form of prevention. But again, I see it as like you're creating more problems.
Yeah. What do you use that to treat in parrots, or when would you use it?
Yeah, it used to be.
Oh, yeast. You said yeast. I'm sorry.
Yeast infections. And we don't use it anymore. So it's kind of an old-fashioned thing. I mean, some people, again, swear by it and absolutely have to have it. But if you're going to put anything in your water like that, you really need to change the whole water container every day because things do grow in there, and that's the point. So I think if you have a fresh water system and it's moving around and it's recirculating like that, you don't really need to add anything to the water. In fact, I'm not planning to do that to my own.
Moving around and circulating. Sounds very familiar to
for hot pepper flakes. I had a deer coming and eating out of my free-range feed, so I put some hot pepper flakes in there. And then I noticed, and squirrels too. Yeah. But then I noticed that the yolks got darker. So
yeah, anything that you put in there. I mean, some people say birds in general just like hot pepper, and it's a flavor that they like. I don't know that that's true necessarily with chickens. So again, it's not a bad thing if your chickens like it, if you want to sprinkle a little something and you think they're enjoying it, but I don't think it's something you have to do medically.
Okay, it's not going to help with anything.
No,
keep them healthier. Same with oregano.
Oregano is supposed to be like an antibiotic properties, antibacterial.
Yeah, again, I think these are all kinds of things that people try. I think keeping your coop super clean, having fresh water, fresh feed, spot cleaning, those are the things that are going to deter illness, and not necessarily any kind of magical stuff you're going to put on the feed or the water.
So a good, healthy, sunshine, just like us, eat well, get outside,
Well, see now here you got to get to the root of the problem, right? And what I hear again is, and it seems like the Western style of thinking is to always treat something instead of focusing on the prevention.
Yeah.
And that drives me nuts. Doesn't it just make sense to have prevention? And when you really think about it, that's what our coops are doing. And it's like why I flipped on the rope wrap roost bar. It's like prevention is important. It is now needed. And I know people are going to be like, I don't want to buy those. You don't need that. But, you can easily make the argument that prevention is so important.
Absolutely.
So if you guys are just joining us, we have Dr. Laurie Hess on. If you have any questions she's an avian expert.
She's a vet. She has her own practice. So anybody that's in the Westchester area, she is at the Veterinary Center for Birds and Exotics in Bedford Hills, New York. So if you're in Westchester and you're looking for help for your chicken or your exotic pets or your macaw or your lizard,
so
and I will put these links on the show notes.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So please,
and her book.
So chickens are not really exotic. Why do we call them exotics?
Yeah, they are. They are. I mean, anything that's not a dog and cat is considered an exotic animal.
Oh, okay.
And I made fun of a lot about 15 years ago when I said, I'm going to open an animal hospital that doesn't treat dogs or cats and just treats birds and exotics. And they were like, oh, you can't do that. You're never going to make it, or whatever. And so now I have 4 vets working 6 days a week on call 24/7. And we see birds and exotic animals, everything other than dogs and cats, from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, all over the place.
Yeah, because there's not a lot a lot of people like you around, a lot of practices
Right.
like
Yeah.
that. So
Right.
I'm sure
So-
people are driving.
Yeah. What kind of exotic pets do you treat? And what is your practice? Is it
Well,
mostly bird, or is it you've got
it's
like
a
half
lot of bird.
reptile, or?
Well, it's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Lots and lots of birds and lots of chickens. So many backyard chickens. I
Okay.
can't tell you.
What's
Yeah,
your
so
most
tell me.
common problem you see with chickens when people come in with their chickens?
Egg binding. Egg binding. Terrible.
Tell us,
So
please. Tell us what
Yeah.
what we call
tell you.
egg bound or egg binding, and what can we do, what causes it, and what prevents it.
How can you
Sure.
recognize it?
Yeah, so what we see a lot of is, people love chickens, they're great. We
Yeah.
impulse buy, and this is true with any kind of exotic pet. Like, it's adorable, it's so different, I gotta have one. And we know that, like, chickens are an illness. You have one, and then you want another and another, and you want another breed, and
I don't know about
you get
illness.
yeah, exactly. But people
Obsession.
don't always
We
do
prefer
the-
obsession, Laurie.
Enthusiast.
Yeah, they don't always do their research. And, and you've preached this in the videos that I've watched you in too, you need to make sure that chickens get a lot of sunlight. They need to have ultraviolet light to make vitamin D in their skin. And then they need that vitamin D to absorb calcium from their food. So we have to make sure that they're on the right type of diet for their stage of life, whether they're starting and growing, or they're laying, which is a big part of their life, or they're just, slowing down and in that maintenance phase, and the nutrients in their diet change. And so, and also, if you're not giving them enough calcium, then, they're not necessarily having enough calcium to lay those eggs. So what we see a lot of is that people are well-intentioned, and they may start them on one type of food and not realize that when they start laying eggs, they need layer food, which has more calcium and more nutrition, more protein, to appropriate for egg laying. So unfortunately, a lot of people, and I also don't give supplemental calcium, oyster shell grit, which I'm a big fan of. And they don't necessarily get outside enough to get enough ultraviolet light. So it's a combination of all those things. And when an egg is made in the body, the last thing that happens on the way out the door is that shell is put on. And so the yolk is laid on first, and all the protein around it, the egg white, and then the shell goes on last. If you don't have enough calcium in your body, you make that yolk and you make that egg white, and then it gets stuck inside. And that's what egg binding most commonly when we see it in chickens is. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so fascinating, and honest to God, I can't believe I didn't think of this before, but just connecting more dots. Something I've said, and I get why some people argue with me about this. I think I've even did a video. If I didn't, we got to do it. I have told people, if you are having any problems with your chickens, one of the best ways, no matter what it is, I don't care what it is, but there is such a high potential, I'm talking extreme high potential, to help fix it by just doing one thing. Open up the door to your run, let the chickens free range. They know what they need. If they need to go find calcium, they'll find calcium, or there's a variety of the food source. They know when they need sun. They know when they need the dust bath. And so many people are like, well, I got predators. But I'm like, okay, I get it. And I never want to see an animal ever get lost to predation. But we potentially are causing more harm by keeping them in the runs, even though, yes, I promote big runs and that, give them access when the sun is coming up. They'll get out in the sun. But you see a lot of these smaller, what I call coop coffins. And they're, again, all the right intentions, but they actually make things worse. And that's just taking it a step further, how important it is to get that vitamin D, to get that sunlight. And then on the flip side, think about all those chickens, and we already know factory farming isn't the greatest for chickens. We do it because it keeps the cost low and convenience, this and that. They're not getting any sunlight. Like, if things weren't already bad enough, I just never put those two together. That's just even worse.
Yeah, and you guys have a great idea. I mean, I'm always worried about predators, and we're also worried a little bit about avian influenza, is a big disease that's out there, and it's carried by wild birds. So one of the things that I'm doing with my coop is I have the extended run, and then I want my chickens to be able to free range around that run. So I'm gonna do a little mesh over the top, where sunlight can still get down in through, and they can still, have wonderful fresh air and sunlight and have some free range, but they're also protected from predators and from wild birds that might want to come land, in their area. So there's a balance, and we can work through it, but it's a big deal. You have to be aware of avian influenza, but you also have to make sure your animals are getting enough sunlight.
So for the egg binding, how would you recognize that, and how would you treat it?
Well, I think the biggest complaint that we hear when people bring their chickens in, and it's tough, you have to pay attention to your chickens. If you, with your dog or your cat, it's in your house and oh, they're not eating, or, he looks off today. You have to really look at your chickens. Are they eating right? Are they moving around? Are they squawking? Are they playing? Are they interacting? Or are they really lethargic? And one of the big things that we see is that, people don't catch that initially because maybe they're not looking as carefully as they should. People don't notice, when maybe one or more chickens stops laying. It's hard. They're all in there together. They're sharing nest boxes, right? So how do you know if one just stops laying? So sometimes we hear, oh, she stopped laying. I think it was a few months ago. I'm not really sure. And what ends up happening with egg binding often is, as I said before, they lay that yolk inside and they lay that egg white around it. And then it just doesn't come out, but you don't notice because they're all sharing a nest box and, who knows? Yeah. And then when we actually look at these chickens, they have these big bellies and we see and we can feel it, but we can also use an ultrasound machine, like on a pregnant woman, to see those little round yolks stuck inside, and they're laying them, but they're not coming out. So that's a really common presentation.
So what I'm hearing is that Laurie has made the argument for the helicopter chicken mom. So I feel completely vindicated and totally.
Yeah, you're right. And the lazy chicken owner that I am, I'm feeling really bad right now. I could have egg-bound chickens that I don't even know about.
And I think the other thing that is important to mention is that it's hard with chickens because they are prey animals. They're prey. They're so used to hiding their illnesses. So that's even with a small flock like I have it relative to Kristen, for example. But, well, I love Kristen because she's given me such amazing chickens too. So
in the middle of the night.
Or during the day.
But no, you're right. They hide that.
They hide from, because they hide it from predators, but they also hide it because they get picked on from their own flock.
Right. And usually by the time you see it, it's way too late.
Yeah. And I'm always like that. I come in, I'm like, oh, this one's isolating, because I can always tell the isolating kind of behavior where when I go out there, they usually all come around me. And if one kind of hangs back and stuff like that. So, I've clearly worried too much about ones that ended up being fine. So, but there's a lot of times I've been able to tell that something was going on. And a lot of it has been, in my experience, it's been reproductive disease because they are egg layers. They're, the Rhode Island Reds, the ones that are made to lay a lot of eggs very quickly in their life can have a shortened life just having basically cancer of their oviduct.
You just want to make sure you look for, it's, as I said, not knowing who's laying is one thing, but just looking, as Ingrid said, when they're sick, they are prey and they do try to hide, but sometimes they can't hide it. So they fluff up and they try to trap warm air between their feathers and their bodies. It's like having a fever. So if you see a fluffed up looking chicken, if they're, hanging their heads, if their comb and their wattles can look really, really either pale or very, very red because they're dehydrated. Those are all signs that, there's something going on, and it may or may not be egg binding, but it's something that you want to be aware of and you want to address right away and not wait, because, they will get pecked on by their neighbors. Sometimes they get parasite ridden too, because they're not feeling great and they're not, cleaning themselves off the way they should. Chickens are very clean, and when you see parasites on them, something's wrong. Yeah. So things to keep in mind.
So that is the value of the chicken check.
Yes.
The chicken check. And how would you treat egg-bound chickens, or is there a treatment? Is there any saving them?
Yeah, it depends on kind of where we are. Sometimes they do form that shell and they can't actually push it out. So they actually have a uterus as part of they have an oviduct and a uterus. And if they get enough calcium and the shell can be formed, they can push it out. So we start giving them calcium, and we give them vitamin D injections too. If they are not able to form the shell, unfortunately, the only way to get it out is to do surgery, which most people don't want to do, unfortunately. So it is something that it's really hard, because sometimes, it's a big deal to fix. We're happy when we can feel the eggshell. that's forming and give them more calcium. And then, you know, the uterus is a muscle, so it needs calcium to contract. And with a little added calcium, sometimes we can push that egg out, or we can extract it. It's when it's really deep inside with no shell that we actually have to go into the belly surgically and take it out.
No, yikes.
All right. We have
Okay, so if you are just joining us, we are live February 9th, 2024. Dr. Laurie Hess has joined us today. Again, thank you so much. What a treat to have her here. We have a chicken expert. She is an avian expert. That's her specialty as a veterinarian. And I think she pretty much said, yeah, they are exotic. I didn't hear what defined them as exotic.
Anything but dog or cat.
Anything but dog or cat is
Right?
considered an exotic.
And
Very,
not farm, probably.
very
And not
interesting.
zoo. It's not a zoo
Yeah.
animal.
So if you have
Something
any questions, today is the day. Please ask away. And I love that you guys are following the pro tip. Type in question. That way Ingrid sees it.
Yeah.
And gets it in. And real quick, yes, Fish and Matt Ryan, I agree with Benjamin. I was actually thinking we had so much fun last week guessing how many nipples that were in that jar. We need to do another contest. And I was thinking the same thing. How many feet of rope on a rope wrap Bruce bar would blow people's mind how much it is. So we will have to definitely do that next week. Which you will be here.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I will also want to mention Dr. Hess's book, which is a memoir called Unlikely Companions, The Adventures of an Exotic Animal Doctor.
You just took my closing away from me. There's no better way than to finish with the book. But that's okay. Go ahead. One more time.
Well, we'll mention it again, but, you know, people come in, they leave. I want to make sure that
true.
everybody...
That's fair. That is fair. Yes.
If you're playing a drinking game, we got to know what day it is. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that is the joke every time I give the date. But that's because Ingrid tells me to, I thought. All right, yes, next questions.
Okay, so E. Stormy says, my leg bar went from the sweetest baby in the flock, one of them, to pretty much pecking me every chance she gets. Is there a way or method I could do to reverse that?
Well, that's a really good question. And the first thing I tell people is that when you notice a change, you know your chickens, right? You know your pets. They all have different personalities, which I don't think everyone appreciates, you know, different chickens. There is a pecking order often, you know, where some are more dominant. But if you see a change in the pecking order, if you see a change in one of your chicken's behavior, the first thing you need to make sure is that that chicken isn't sick. Because they may be not feeling well, they may just feel, you know, overly protective and be aggressive because they're not feeling great. So check out things a little more carefully, look at them, make sure they're not sick, make sure there's nothing going on. Is she being picked on by other birds in the flock? Is she acting more aggressive to you because she's being defensive? So there's a lot of reasons for behavior changes. You know, some of them are truly medical things, and it's not something I can answer really simply, but you have to look into it a little bit more carefully and figure out, is this a behavior thing? Is this a pecking order thing? Or is there something medical going on? That's what I would recommend checking out first.
I've seen a lot of different pecking order changes in my flock. I had one that was the lowest that decided to go after the top girl she kind of like, it was like a jailhouse thing. She kind of just said, I'm going to pick on the strongest one and I'm going to pick on her. And then all of a sudden she was left fine and it changed the pecking order. And I also, I've seen different ones as my one bird is aging out. I see my other one that's next to her in line kind of being the one that's the keeping order, as the other one is kind of just being like a quiet leader type of thing. So it does change throughout your flock's history too. And sometimes like ones that would squat for me and let me pick them up all of a sudden don't. So sometimes it's just behavioral. It's just something going on, and it's not always something sick, but it's a good point to always look to make sure that they're okay.
Sometimes they're just moody. We all have bad days. I mean, if they're a little broody one day, or they didn't sleep well, they may not feel great. If it's something persistent, though, I would definitely look into it a little deeper.
Okay. Do you want to bring in the next question? Mm-hmm. I see so many. There's so many, and we're already at 12:38. And Dr. Laurie, I appreciate you said you don't have a hard deadline, but we do want to respect your time so much. So I don't know if we want to.
Okay, so
I don't know if we're ready for our rapid fire or no. What do you think?
Not yet.
So, okay, good. So if you definitely leave your questions in there. So Gina, question, my chickens spend more time eating their dust bath instead of taking a dust bath. I've never heard of that before. Is it safe for them to eat ash, DE, and sand? Interesting.
The short answer is no, not excited about their eating it. We do see, some chickens and animals in general will eat things they shouldn't, and they get an impaction. And sand is something that we do see them get impacted with. So what I would recommend is either one of two things. You could leave the dust bath in and, see if they use it and then take it out so that they don't have access to it all the time, or change what you're using to give them a dust bath. I mean, you can use sand, you can use ash, you can use diatomaceous earth, you can use, there's a whole bunch of things that you can use. And they really shouldn't be eating it. It's probably not a great thing. So, maybe just give it to them for a limited time, or change what you're using and see if they do it with something else.
Yeah, because one thought that I would have is I wonder if they're not free ranging and that's all they have for grit.
Yeah, that's
Is why I cannot emphasize enough. If you cannot free range, which you can, everyone can free range. So anyways, but if you insist you're not going to free range, make sure that is all they have, folks. That is their outdoors. They got to have everything.
You got to bring it all to them.
Exactly. So that would be something I would think about. And so, and Dr. Laurie, you mentioned something that we might as well just get into right now, because this is a question we get all the time, drives me nuts, would love your opinion. And you just hit on it a little bit. When it comes to putting the substrate inside the run area for your chickens, do you see any benefit at all to sand inside the run?
I'm not a big, huge fan of sand because I do see them eat it. I think, people do use it for dust baths, and I think it's fine if they're not eating it, but I have seen them eat it. So I do think it's really important, as you said, for them to be able to forage and peck and dig, and you need some kind of substrate in that run so that, they can do that. That's their natural behavior, and they need to peck at insects and dirt. And, people love to have their coops look beautiful and have these pristine looking, floors, but that's not what chickens do. I mean, they dig and they peck and they like to pick up little worms and stuff. You got to give them a chance to do those natural behaviors.
Perfect. So well done. So pretty much what I did is I just set you up for our next year's audio bite, because I can't emphasize that enough. That'll be there at the beginning of the show. It drives me nuts. And there's even, I'm not going to name names. I wish I would. I would love to bring her on and not necessarily have a debate, but I'd love to hear both sides of the story. And there are experts out there that insist if you are not putting sand, then when I say put sand in your run, I'm talking about they fill the whole entire run like they're on a freaking beach.
We're not fans of that.
Not at all. It's stupid. It's not what the chickens want. And I just saw again recently another post where people are believing what she's saying. She's like, oh yeah, if you're not doing sand, you're a horrible chicken owner.
I would think that the beneficial microbes aren't present in sand like they are.
It's too sterile. It's stupid.
To break down those droppings, but that's just my gut.
The other thing about sand too is that sand is slippery, and we've all seen leg, deformities in chickens that splay leg. When you're standing on something that doesn't have good traction, they splay, and once they splay, you can't really fix that so easily and without a lot of surgery. So you want good footing. You want something that's slippery and going to slip around underneath their feet.
What are you going to put in your run?
Oh, I'm going to put a bunch of kind of mulch and leaves and all kinds of fun stuff.
She's been watching. She's right on point. Been watching our videos.
And I also say...
Well, you asked me why I chose you, and you said all the right things to me. In fact, I made my entire family watch. We had a big snowstorm in the Northeast, and I told you we watched all the videos during the COVID pandemic when we were locked inside. We just watched them all again.
Oh, nice.
That is awesome. And speaking of videos, again, I want to get to everyone's questions, but there's another one that I would love to hear Dr. Laurie's opinion. But real quick, before I forget, anyone listening out in my office, is not checking her text, can I please have someone bring me in a glass of water or a cup of coffee? I need something. She's not seeing the text, so please bring that in. Okay, a video came out recently. Did we watch it?
The
Carolina
AC
Coops,
one?
the AC one.
I did.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to say I flipped on it, but it was fascinating. Dr. Laurie, we have a customer that we just absolutely love and adore. We love all our customers, but this particular one, I love listening to her because she's very good she's smart, and she does things her way, which I absolutely love. And we've built her a custom chicken coop. We've done a goose house. She has horses. She's awesome with her animals. And it's down in, when I say southern Alabama, you can be to the ocean in about 5 minutes. And when I last went out there to film, without actually working, but we went there to film to get ready for another job coming up, I have never experienced humidity like I did in my life. And I'm telling you, we've worked in Florida. We've been down the Everglades. There was something about here. The humidity was awful. So we did a bunch of filming. And when I was walking around behind her coop, sure enough, did you not bring your own?
I didn't bring a pen.
You need to do your homework.
Of things.
Good. She had an AC unit. She had an air conditioner in the back of her hen house. I'm like, oh, hell no. What does she do? She don't need to do that. But I was like, no, if she did that, there was a reason for it. And we ended up filming it. If you haven't seen it, that video just came out. She mentioned something that I was like, oh, I never thought about it, because we're big fans of, build the structure the right way so that you're mimicking the forest. You got the canopy, and then get down. There's lots of room, lots of ventilation, so it's not a pressure cooker. But it still gets really hot. And we all know, and if you don't know this, please, folks, listen to me. Heat kills your chickens. It's not so much the cold, all right? So many people get obsessed with the cold temperatures. But when I walked in there, one of the things about air conditioning is it is a dehumidifier. And it makes it so much more comfortable. And she said, Matt, it's a lot about getting the humidity down. And I was like, oh, that's not bad. Dr. Laurie, what would be your thoughts to that about, I'm not saying that is necessary, but if you are in a very hot climate, could you see that turning into a negative effect? Or is it like, no, as long as it's set up right, it could actually, I could see that being beneficial to a chicken.
It's an interesting idea. Chickens and birds in general can overheat when it's super, super hot. So there's two issues. There's heat and there's humidity. So I'm a big fan of circulating air. I think stagnant air, particularly when it's really, really humid, promotes a lot of fungal growth. And we see a bad fungus called aspergillosis, which can affect chickens and kill them. They're really sensitive to it. And if the air isn't circulating and you got a lot of moisture hanging out in the air, aspergillosis hangs out in dust. So dust lands on a moist surface and then you get fungal growth. I don't know. I've never really seen an air conditioner. I've seen fans circulating the air so that you don't have all that moisture on surfaces. I guess if it's super, super hot and your chickens are panting and they're, that kind of thing. But I think you can probably do the same thing with just circulating air, not worrying so much about, breaking up the humidity basically and moving the air around and not necessarily changing the temperature. But it's interesting. Everyone has a reason, I guess. So
you would recommend fans?
I like fans moving air around where you have a lot of humidity and where you have stagnant air. I think, hopefully most of us live in places where the way you've designed the coops in general, there's a lot of air circulating, there's cross ventilation, which I think is really, really important. And we do see a lot of disease when there's a lot of stagnant air and dust. But you also have to be careful that you're not, blowing stuff around that now you've stimulated a lot of stuff in the air that to breathe in, because their respiratory tracts are really sensitive to stuff in the air, aerosolized like dust and particles and things like that. So you have to design it carefully if you're going to use a fan.
So that's interesting. And this reminds me of growing coral. You forget when you grow coral, you have to have the ocean come in and then come out. It kind of brings in nutrients and then it takes the waste away. When we talk about trees before coops were invented, or we talk about chickens before coops were invented, they're up in the trees. They're actually going higher. One of the things I love about our coops, it's not much, but just whatever. When they're up higher, you have more ventilation. It's like going up into the tree, and they do have that air movement. So we have talked about fans, and we have installed fans, and it's mainly more to get that exchange so that it's not stagnant. So that is a word that I despise, is when there's stagnation, because that can harbor and cause all kinds of problems. And when we have had customers, and I learned this lesson one day, I'll never forget this. They put ceiling fans inside their chicken coop. When they turned it on, and when it happened to me in my garage, it made sense. They went running, and I'm like, what in the world? I was like, oh, they thought it was a predator. They thought it was a hawk. So I would never recommend ceiling fans, but what we do love about our structures is there's so much cross ventilation so that they should naturally convect. So we're not talking, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we say ventilation and air movement, maybe just, it's blowing like crazy, like Dr. Hess just said. You don't want disturbance. So we would kind of, if we do have potential high humidity or stagnation, even with the windows open, and God knows she has lots of windows, they were open, but down in the deep south, just to breathe was horrific. So I could see maybe just keeping it so the air is moving, so it's not so much to kick up dust, but it's not
Well, there is natural movement in a house or in a chicken house when you have the ridge.
Right.
You know, the air naturally rises and
yeah. I'm just trying to think here because I can only imagine because we know the comments that we get after the show, and so I just want to be clear that we're not talking about maybe having gusts of wind, but
No, nothing like that. And you said it. I mean, I've actually seen really horrible injuries where ceiling fans go on, and we think, oh, they're way away, and chickens or birds in general get spooked and they jump up. And I've actually seen head injuries. So if you're going to put any kind of fan at all, I would recommend putting kind of like a mesh cover over it so that there are no blades exposed. You don't want chickens, jumping or hitting them. And I also think one nice thing about your coops, and you asked me why I chose your coop. I'm excited to have a cupola in the coop, and to have that circulating air too. So any way that you can get air circulating where it's safe air, you don't need, as you said, some crazy current of air, just circulating air so that there's fresh air and there's air moving through. It doesn't have to be at high speed.
safe air. Stealing it, stolen, love it. I am going to use that so many because that's what I'm trying to say. There is safe air, and that's actually what our coops are doing just naturally. Interesting. Okay,
Right.
so moving on, we got lots of questions. Thank you so
questions.
much for that. I'm glad I got that off my chest. So sand bad and air conditioners interesting. Okay, moving on.
Kathy says, we have a pullet that started laying in November. She's on layer feed and oyster shell always. Every 5 to 7 days, she lays a thin, soft shell egg. Is there anything we can do to get normal eggs?
Well, the first thing that I think of when she's laying the thin, soft-shelled egg is that she's not getting enough calcium.
Yeah.
So remember, it's not just a matter of eating enough calcium. As we said before, it's about that sunlight. It's about that vitamin D. You must have sunlight. Sunlight makes you make vitamin D in your skin, same as us. That's why all those people like me are in the Northeast are sitting inside, and we all have, osteoporosis in our bones because we're not getting enough sunlight. But your chicken is the same way. So if your chickens are inside and they're not getting enough light, and remember, November, daylight cycles get shorter. You need about 14 or so hours of sunlight a day to have enough sunlight to lay healthy eggs. So, it is natural for chickens to lay fewer eggs during the fall and the winter time. But if you're seeing a thin-shelled eggs, that's something's going on. So I would make sure that she's really eating that oyster shell grit. We put it out and we assume they're eating it, but we don't really know that. So pay a lot of attention to that. Make sure they're getting enough sunlight. If you're really seeing, particularly if there's more than one bird that's getting laying thin-shelled eggs, there could be something else going on. So I would make all those changes, light, oyster shell, all of that, and then just see what happens. If it keeps happening, it may be that there's something going on inside that chicken that you can't see from the outside.
Plus, she's pretty young, so sometimes they have a few misfires when they're young.
So I think it's time for rapid fire. We are almost coming up to, and there's so many great questions like this one. I would love to hear about.
The short answer for this.
Well, no, not to be short. No. You're doing great.
I'm going to read the question. I'm going to read the question for the podcast. Can you talk about the benefits of fermenting feed? Is mold a concern if this is not done correctly?
The answer is yes. Mold is a concern if that's not done correctly. I mean, I don't know. People do ferment feed. I'm not really a big fan because I do worry about bacteria and mold. I think fresh food is a better choice. There are things that can ferment like, bedding and using, the deep litter system and litter can ferment safely, but I don't know that I would recommend feeding fermented food because there is a big risk for mold and bacteria. That's just my opinion.
That's so interesting because there are people that swear by it.
Yeah.
See, okay, so it was personal. I appreciate you offering your water. I'm like, they're not listening to me. They're just punking me. But I was like, I'm going to put someone really to the test that I knew would not fail on me. Thank you, Danny.
The other thing, Laurie, was that because people have talked about fermented feed and making their feed go longer, but I mean, birds store the food in their crop during the day. So in a sense, the benefits of fermented feed, they're actually doing that naturally, aren't they, in a sense? Because the feed is, and they digest it overnight. So they're almost like self-fermenting.
Right. And you would almost screw up their process, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, when they take it into their crop, that's the first part of digestion. Their first enzymes are released in that crop, and they do start digestion there, and then it's a slow process, and then it moves down through the rest of them. So I don't know, other than, yeah, it would be really nice to have fewer food bills and make your feed last longer. But I'm a big fan of fresher food is healthier, so I don't know. I think it's better to just give them fresh food than to ferment. But again,
Okay.
my opinion.
You want to read this, Matt? Because I've had the
Oh,
same
no,
problem.
you read it for the podcast. Apparently, when I read it, it's not good enough for the podcast, so go ahead.
Wow. So, Fish and Matt Ryan says, my hens are pecking off some white paint that has been peeling off the shed in the backyard. Will they be okay? I know I got to paint it, but I haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, so I'm not a super big fan of pecking paint because we just never know, in particular, that paint doesn't have lead in it. We know chickens like to peck at everything. They're not necessarily the brightest animals in the whole world as much as we love them. And if it's peckable, particularly if it's shiny, they will eat it. If that is an older, shed that has lead in that paint, they can get lead poisoning really, really easily. So if you can't paint it, maybe block it. Just put something in front of it so they can't get to it.
That's what I had to do. Somebody started like pecking the side of the house, and then once they got somebody started it, then they were all doing it, and you could hear it inside the house. So now we have this plywood in front of the house, so they can't, because once they start getting a piece of it, then they all start. Yeah,
Dude, insulation, like styrofoam insulation, just the same. It's horrible. They go nuts.
Yes, sir.
Is it Ellie or Ellie? So she says, could you talk about ducks also? Like we can't really do that generally, but I do want to bring something up because I need to hear it, even though I feel we beat this to the death. And we've confirmed that we do like a thing that we make, but why not take the opportunity to get another vet to approve or disapprove? Don't try to, tell us what you think we want to hear, because we're here because we need your expertise. But what I'm getting at is ducks. Ducks are becoming very popular for many reasons. I love them. The eggs are I think even better than chicken eggs, but ducks are messier. But here at Carolina Coops, what we're always trying to do is allow people to have an animal that they would normally think they couldn't, but set it up so that they're not working harder than they have to. But ducks can get tricky, especially because when we think of ducks, we think of water. And what I have learned is that it is possible to have ducks without a body of water, but as long as they can clean their face, their nares, that they got to get in to their nostrils to be able to clean that out, which is what they would do naturally when they're swimming, that you can have ducks in a chicken coop kind of setting, if you will, but not obviously going up to the run. They got their own duck house. But we have a device called a duck dipper. And the idea is that it's a large basin of water. It's a stainless steel kitchen sink. And we have a barrier in front of them that they can stick their head through, but it allows them to stick their head in, and they shake it, and they will try to drink or whatever. And it's not meant for them to drink the water there. It's just so they can at least get their head in and swim without making a huge mess and having to clean it every day. So hopefully it makes sense what I'm saying. Would you or would you disagree that a duck dipper is beneficial? What would be your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've seen, again, having been a fan of your videos, I've actually seen how you set it up. And I think the major thing with ducks is, yes, they like to eat while they're floating. That's a behavioral thing. They also need to be off their feet because they get pressure sores. They get bumblefoot even more than chickens do. So they are built and made to float on water where there's no pressure on their feet. So they need to sit in a body of water, and it doesn't have to be a lake. I mean, you can do you can have a kiddie pool, right. And you can arrange your coop so that, and I know you have some great, I don't know exactly what it's called, but again, the duck dipper places where where ducks can actually sit and get off their feet. The major thing that I think is important is I love ducks and I love chickens. I don't love housing them together. Because they carry different diseases. And that's the one thing I'm going to say, that particularly now with avian influenza as a big problem, ducks can carry avian influenza without any signs at all, and they can spread it to chickens. So I love them both, and you can have them on your property. I would probably just separate them. So have your duck house and have your chicken house, and keep them separate. But you do not have to have a lake to have ducks successfully. I agree.
Perfect. Okay, so and then Yeah, I mean, there's always that risk. And like, I also see Fish and Matt Ryan asking, okay, I have a rain system. I'm collecting rainwater. Migratory birds, water birds are swimming over. They defecate, get the defecation on the roof. And then let's say they have avian flu and then it gets into their water. Is that safe? Is it not safe? And I think about my old earth science teacher. The solution to pollution is dilution. Maybe there is a benefit now to have the 50 gallons of water because it won't be as concentrated. But could you talk about that real quick when it comes to the avian flu and the water system if you're collecting rainwater?
Yeah, I mean, listen, birds are going to walk outside. I mean, the water's on your grass too. So unless you're going to keep them locked in the hen house, you can't completely insulate your chickens. But you can do things to try to prevent wild birds from landing in the middle of your flock as they're sitting in their, in their run or whatever, or free ranging. Like I said, I'm going to set mine up so that I have a mesh system and you can do it. And you guys have some great suggestions. I've talked to your staff about it, so that it can look really, really nice. And you can use, very fine hardware cloth so that it kind of fades away and you don't see it. But it does protect against predators. It protects against those animals. It doesn't prevent droppings, but it certainly prevents a large dropping from falling down right in the middle of your run. So, you just use common sense. I mean, you just don't want to have your chickens out where there's lots of waterfowl, because waterfowl are pretty much the main spreaders right now of avian flu. And it is something you really want to protect yourself against. It's kind of all over the country. It doesn't mean you can't have great chickens. You can. You just want to think a little bit about it, and with some common sense.
It is 1:00. We can continue?
Yes.
Awesome. Guys, if you're just joining us, we are live February 9th, 2024. Dr. Laurie Hess here, that is just a wealth of knowledge, avian expert, taking so much time out of her busy schedule to answer any of your chicken questions or maybe duck questions. So please, if you have those questions, now is the time. We will continue the rapid fire. And, please bring that one in. All right. This is a big one. May I read this one for the pot, or would you like to?
No, go.
Okay. What are the pros and cons for vaccinating, and which vaccines would you recommend, especially if showing chickens? All right, so there's a lot there. So let's start right off the bat. Vaccinating, pros and cons.
And which
Well, the big one is Marek's disease. I do not know why anyone would not get a Marek's vaccinated chicken. We see Marek's disease a lot. It is preventable. The chicks have to be vaccinated either in the egg or during the first day of life. So if you're getting your chickens, hopefully you're getting your chickens from a reputable place where they really pay attention. But it costs 10 cents more to get a chick that's vaccinated for Marek's. And if you don't do it, you could lose your whole flock. So that is the most important vaccine. In terms of other vaccines, there are a lot of diseases out there, and some of them are vaccinatable against and some are not. I'm probably going to say something unpopular right now. I am a huge fan of chickens. I'm not a big fan of showing chickens these days because of the avian flu. There's avian flu, but there's also a whole host of other diseases that you can bring in. And in good chicken medicine, it's kind of all in and all out. So you get your birds and you get them all at the same time and ideally close to the same age, and you don't mix ages, and you keep them together and you try to prevent them from being, interacting with chickens on another farm. Because there are a lot of diseases that we see asymptomatic carriers. So, some chickens are carrying diseases and they're not affected, but they can, spread it on their feathers and on their respiratory tract secretions and stuff if they cough or sneeze. And, that's why if you are going to visit a show or another person's farm, you really want to disinfect your clothes and your shoes and stuff like that, because that's how it's spread. Lots of diseases, not necessarily just avian flu. So I would recommend you talk to your vet about your particular situation, about, how many chickens you have, and are you bringing in more at different times? Are there different ages? Because that affects whether we vaccinate too. But across the board, Marek's is the one that I recommend by far for every chicken owner.
So you mentioned vaccinating in the egg, and for the longest time, bantams couldn't vaccinate because the needle was too long. But supposedly there is a hatchery now that does vaccinate the bantams. And I was just wondering, is it that they've figured out how to get a little tiny micro needle, or are they going into the eggs? So I was just kind of curious about that. I thought that was very fascinating.
I don't really know the answer to that, but I know that it's all done before day one and before you get that chick to you, and that's the most important thing, is that it gets done, period.
And also, someone just did ask about if the rope wrap roost bars can be bought to length. Absolutely, we are
Yes, just call
specialty
us.
at just call us. We can do anything.
We get the question a lot, what can you not feed chickens when you're bringing out scraps from the house and stuff
Oh,
like that?
you're gonna go there. Okay, let's do it.
Well, we know a lot of birds, and not all birds, but we know a lot of birds are very sensitive to avocados. So there's a chemical, for lack of a better word, that's in an avocado and certain avocados. So we don't really take a risk. Don't recommend feeding avocados. Certainly nothing with caffeine in it, nothing with alcohol, no chocolate.
Oh my gosh,
all
what?
the good things. I know.
Wait,
These are the
coffee
things we
grounds are
like.
out?
Okay, so I knew this was gonna happen. We invented caffeinated eggs by giving them coffee grounds. So no caffeine. Why no caffeine?
It can affect their heart rate. It can really jack. You know how it affects. When you're drinking a big cup of coffee and your
Hell
heart rate goes
yeah.
really, really fast. Well, think about if you throw some coffee grinds in there. I mean, I'm sure that there are some chickens that are fine, but for those that might not be fine, why take a risk? So,
Oh, my chickens will not go out into the yard until I've given them the coffee grounds. Like, I'm not starting my day.
Anything else?
Onions and garlic and things like that, super, super spicy things can really upset their GI tract too. So, just use common sense. Things that are,
Okay, hold on a minute. No, oh boy, I knew you. Okay, no, I'm glad you went there. I was told if you want to have some flavored eggs like onion and garlic in it, feed them onions and garlic. The worst thing that's going to happen is you might taste it in the eggs. I doubt that's true, but it's kind of funny. But you're saying that onions and garlic, and I don't know if they come from the same family or not, but that can actually affect their digestive system.
It can in some, yeah. We see, I mean, again, if it's like a little piece, not a big deal. But we know if you throw stuff out there, they're all going for it. And, if one goes for it, they're all going for it because they're all very competitive. So I'm not a big fan of super, spicy things like that. It can kind of mess up their GI tract sometimes. So I think all the vegetables you want that are safe, that are not super, super spicy or avocado based, I think are safe. There's not a lot of other rules, just caffeine in general and chocolate and things like that.
Can they eat chicken?
They can. I know that sounds a little cannibalistic.
They love it.
They love it.
And eggs?
So they do eat some things that they, we don't talk about it, but they do sometimes.
Is there something to, some people have their chickens out in the garden and people are worried about toxic plants, but as a whole, are chickens going to avoid things that are general? I mean, I know if we throw food out to them, that might be a different thing, but just in the wild kind of thing, where they tend to avoid stuff that...
How good are their instincts?
Yeah. Thank you, Kristen.
I tend not to trust them. I think that they're just really attracted to things. I mean, they pick up hardware in our yard, right? Like nails and shiny things. So I don't think that they're necessarily instinctively the smartest animals. I think that you should do your research. I mean, if you have something that's potentially toxic, you just fence it off. Give them safe things to play out. There's so many things, that they can chew on, and branches and leaves that are safe. So I think it's all part of doing your research to know. And there are lists online of toxic plants. There are hundreds of them for birds. Just avoid the ones that we know are toxic, and don't take any risk. There's a lot of safe things.
All right, so we have another question. If you had to recommend a minimum free range area, what would that area be and look like per hen? Not to include the run of the coop, but just like what would you suggest?
I mean, more is better. So
that's what we always say.
Perfect.
I think our sort of like, for an adult chicken, we like to say no less than 8 to 10 square feet per chicken. So you want to make sure that you're providing at least enough space. But again, they like to go peck and check out things and run around. So, as large a place as you can provide for them. But I think minimum space, 8 to 10 square feet per chicken, I guess counting your run, would be the minimum I would feel comfortable with. Even if you create vertical space for them, it doesn't all have to be on the ground. If you're creating different heights for them to perch on, that's another thing, that you can create. If you have a small space, if you live in a semi-urban environment and you have a limited area for them, you can create different levels so that they can, find their own spaces off the ground too.
That's what I do. I put logs, like stumps, and some like little perch bars throughout the coop, and they love it. They're on it all the time. It just gives them something interesting to do too.
Yeah. How long do chickens lay, and how long do they live?
It is very breed specific. I would say, they're at their high point of laying somewhere between 1-2-ish years of age. Depending upon the breed, they can lay for years beyond that. On average, I would say they can live 7+ years. But again, it depends on how you take care of them. I mean, if you're not giving them enough calcium or they're getting exposed to a lot of, disease and things like that, they're not going to live as long. So, with good care, they can live years and years. As they get older, they start to lay fewer eggs, but it really depends on their breed as to how long they can go.
All right, so it is 1:09. Our hard deadline is 1:30, but I see, and thank you guys so much for all the questions. So we're not even halfway through it. So I thought maybe now's the time to maybe practice a rapid fire. It's kind of to be fun and see, the quick boom, because I want to respect everyone that's taking the time to come here. Thank you so much for your questions. These are awesome questions. We have the best audience.
Yeah.
Such great people, and would just love to maybe start a rapid fire. What do you think? All right, but it's still on you. It's your time that is most precious right now. So as quick as you want to answer it, feel free, and we'll just keep on going through it.
Okay.
So Karsten says, is it okay to give popcorn as a treat? Our kittens and chickens eat them together.
Okay, yes, it is. Just don't salt it. No, not a lot of butter. Just a small amount, not excessive pile.
Oh boy, I'm bombing on this food thing today.
Question: how do chickens in the wild change their diet to adjust to their developing nutritional needs?
Remember, the chickens in the wild are exposed to a lot of different things during different seasons, different berries, different bugs. It's not the same thing all the time. So in balance, they get a more balanced plane of nutrition because the seasons change and the nutrients in their area change. So that's why it's really important that when we provide food for them, we provide good nutrition across the board and not, rely on the same thing all the time.
Okay, hold on. Time out. We got to stop the clock for a second. Hold on. So I love this question.
Oh,
Susan, Ingrid.com. You got yourself a free shirt.
Stop saying that.
I love this question because I think, unless I read it wrong, I don't care if I did, because this is my question now, but I think this is what she means. Because we always talk about what did chickens do before coops, right? When chickens are out in the wild, and we love, especially that mama hen, you hear her talk differently to the baby chicks. She's protecting them. She's teaching them. She's cleaning them. How do they know, just like, we have to develop these baby chicks, we're feeding them high protein because they're growing, and all of a sudden at 21 weeks, right to the minute, we're going to switch them over to a higher calcium. In the wild, I mean, are you saying that they don't know to switch it? It's just the variety is for everyone, and what I mean?
No,
or do they know to switch?
They have much more available to them in the wild. It's like a smorgasbord of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've got all these insects, they've got all these worms, they've got different vegetation. They have, and they take in a better plane of nutrition. I mean, that's why it's so important that if you give them a pelleted or crumble diet, that it's appropriate to their age. Obviously, if they're little, and they're growing, their nutritional requirements are going to be very different from if they're older and they're, slowing down and they're not as mobile or they're not making so many eggs. So they know how to do that. We just have to make sure that if we're putting them in a coop and they're not free ranging and having access to all this stuff, that we're providing them with the right life stage diet.
Okay, so wait. So what you're saying is, as long as there's such a variety of food, they'll get what they need. Not so much that they go, okay, I'm 21 weeks old now, I'm switching over to the calcium. Oh, those grubs look good, but can't do it anymore, right? I mean, it's just that there's a variety. Interesting. So, you just brought up another question. This should be a T-shirt. Do you pellet or do you crumble? What is your recommendation for when it comes to the, let's say egg layer mash, crumbles or pellets?
I think it's a personal preference. I think as long as the nutrition works, it doesn't really matter. I mean, pellets are a little less messy. It's up to you, but some birds really, really like it. I think it doesn't matter as long as the nutritional content is the same.
Perfect. Okay, go ahead and start the rapid fire. I just had to chime in there real quick. Congratulations, Suzanne.
Can you overfeed larvae or worms or like mealworms or BSFL?
You can. They're high in protein, and it depends. I mean, chickens love mealworms. It's like crack. It's so much fun. And don't just feed the dry ones. Feed the live ones, because half the fun of it for them is to like catch them and see them and forage and chase them and stuff. But, things like waxworms are super high in fat. They're delicious, but they're very, very high in fat. So limited amounts of that, and you don't want to overdo worms because there's a lot of protein in them.
So
and
how much
you don't
do you
want
think? Like,
a little sprinkle so everybody
Okay.
gets it. I mean, treats in general, and treats are things like vegetables and things other. I know.
What's the definition of a sprinkle? I can only imagine you're growing soldier fly larvae in your house.
oh
And
no, that
Right.
that failed
Well,
like the first week.
oh, I'm just like, you're probably
I'll
just
give you a better. Oh gosh, I'll give you a better idea. So treats in general, whether it's a vegetable, anything other than say your. This includes like scratch grains and mealworms and veggies. That shouldn't be more than about 5% of their diet. So
Okay.
it's not a lot.
Right.
Okay.
Just a little treat, just like us.
And do you
Yeah.
do you recommend any preventative treatments for mites or worms for a chicken in a backyard flock? Your backyard flock chickens.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful because we know, particularly if we're eating the eggs, we don't want to use any medications because we're going to ingest them, and that's why there are so many strict regulations about what can be in chicken feed. I think in general, if you do things the right way, meaning, if they're in a coop, you scrape off that first, in a run, if you scrape off that first layer of soil that they're using all the time and get rid of it and turn over the soil. So a lot of parasites live in that top inch or two. So if you change that over and rake it out and get rid of it so that they're not constantly eating the same worms that are ingesting all the little parasites that they poop out, you can really reduce the parasite load in your chickens. If they're in a small area in your yard, you should be doing the same thing. If you have the luxury of, free ranging them, even like cordoning off different areas so that they can free range in one area during one season, and then you can flip it over and have them free range in another area during, spring, summer, fall kind of thing. I'm not a big fan of medicating. It just, again, it depends on your situation. And if you're eating eggs, you got to be careful.
So you wouldn't do anything just preventatively if you didn't see anything. Like you wouldn't do any medications or dust your chickens or deworm them manually or anything like that.
Some things like that. I mean, dusting. I don't dust my chickens per se unless I see something.
Yeah.
I'm really careful about stuff like that, and a lot of people would disagree with me.
No, I agree
Matt,
with you.
What?
I agree.
What do you guys do? Yeah.
I agree. And the same with the chick feed these days. I say unmedicated and treat if there's an issue. What do you think about that? Or should you start with medicated?
Yeah, coccidiosis is a big deal. And I think for me, I'd rather, a couple times a year get a bunch of droppings and just run a fecal sample on it, test it and make sure that my animals are not having, and I'm not seeing like a lot of diarrhea or anything like that. I'm not a big fan of over medicating because when we over medicate, we create resistance, right? When you kill off the weakest bad germs, the strongest bad germs persist and they just get stronger. So I would rather use unmedicated feed and check periodically, take a sample and check just to make sure there's nothing I need to worry about. Obviously watch for signs of diarrhea or problems, that are obvious, and then treat. Cleanliness is a big, big thing. Spot checking and keeping things clean and getting rid of soiled food and making sure the water is fresh. All of those things are really, really important to preventing a lot of illness.
Again, this is a nod to the overprotective chicken parent that I am.
Well,
So
I mean, we got okay.
very
I mean,
validated by Laurie.
Did you say unmedicated
what
or medicated
happened to
chick
the
feed?
rapid fire part here? But go ahead.
Again, well, I mean, there are reasons for both. I think it depends on how many chickens you have and how clean you can keep it.
Okay. All right.
And then what is the definition of clean is a whole nother story. But okay.
All right. Question on egg binding. If a hen is eating and pooping regularly but stopped laying for a few weeks, can she be egg bound?
Yes, she can be egg bound, 100%. They still poop and they still eat. It's just, remember, these things are coming out different places. So they have a cloaca, which is like a big chamber, and the egg goes into that chamber and then it goes out the vent, which is the little hole you see. And then they have intestines and they poop into that same chamber and then it goes out the vent. But they don't necessarily have to be, they could be eating and seemingly fine for a while, even if they're laying eggs internally.
Don asked, what would be the cost of an ultrasound? What would be the cost to ultrasound a chicken? Which I know that that's not really fair.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it depends where you are in the country, and it depends how extensive. I mean, we do it at my practice, and it just depends. Is this like a quick and once over that we do, or are we spending, half an hour looking? So I can't quote that for every veterinarian.
Right.
It depends where you are. It's a very helpful tool, though, to help us determine if there's eggs stuck inside, short of having to cut open the chicken and look ourselves. So,
right. Kathy asks, how do you give more calcium besides good layer feed and oyster shell?
I think oyster shell is what I do. I mean, you can give calcium-rich vegetables, things like spinach and kale. I mean, those are rich in calcium too, but oyster shell grit is a great way to just, make sure, assuming they're eating it, that they stay in balance with their calcium.
And then again, the key point to the calcium whole thing isn't so much how much they're getting, it's the ability to absorb the nutrients, right? That is the part I think a lot of us miss, especially when they are not allowed to free range and they don't get out into the sunlight.
Yep.
Right. I just want to make sure I got that right, because that makes
100%.
sense. Perfect.
I had a Rhode Island Red that got older, and she was having trouble absorbing calcium. But that was just, that was part of her reproductive disease that ultimately ended up killing her. But that was a symptom of it, where she started having the soft eggs. And I took her to the Avian and exotic vet, and they said that she had like a calcium deficiency. So, and it was probably just her body's inability to absorb it over time.
I think there's a good point there and I actually have another point that I want to bring up about medicated feed. First, that you do need, there's two kinds of grit, right? There's insoluble grit, which is indigestible grit, right? That's like pebbles and stones. Mm-hmm. And then there is oyster shell grit, which is digestible. In order to digest properly, they do need to have some insoluble, undigestible grit. And as Matt said earlier, you do need to give them, if they're going to be not free ranging, when they're free ranging, they tend to pick up little stones and pebbles and they ingest them, and they don't need a lot. They just need a little handful in their gizzard, in their ventriculus, that muscular part of their stomach that grinds up their food. If they're cooped up in a coop, and they don't go outside and peck at the ground, you do need to give them some indigestible grit. And it's just, a couple times a week, a little bit in their food, or, a little bit for them to peck on. And that will help them digest their food, including the oyster shell that they ingest and digest. So that's...
I'm sorry, real quick. It was called the ventriculus?
Yeah. Okay. So in a nutshell, they have two parts of their stomach: the proventriculus, ventriculus, ventriculus, and that's the part of the stomach that releases acids. Like we have acids in our stomach that helps digest, and then food passes from there down through a little narrow funnel, basically called the isthmus, into the ventriculus, which is the gizzard, which is the muscular part that grinds everything up.
Okay.
So
let's pause right there for a second. That's actually where I'm going. Is there another name for the gizzard?
The ventriculus.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. From now on.
Ventriculus, and they're like this.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So from now on, I am not calling them gizzards anymore. I'm calling them, I want ventriculus for dinner tonight. Oh my God, I love gizzards. I don't know why people are so grossed out, but oh my, there's something about them that's so good. And that is such an important job. That thing is in there. It's just,
You're just taking it away from the chickens to eat.
Yep.
Anyways, okay.
One thing I wanted to just mention before we get off the topic is there is a vaccine that can be given to young chicks when they're little now, and it prevents coccidia. And if you get chickens that get that vaccine, you're not supposed to give them medicated feed because it actually counteracts the benefits of the vaccine. So for me, I would rather do that. Then I'm not worried about potentially ingesting any kind of chemical if I'm eating the eggs. But that's, again, just my opinion. But I just want to make that.
Hold on. So that's very important because I call it coccidiosis, right? And that's the actual, like the after effect of the coccidia. How
do you pronounce it?
Coccidia or the the parasites, and coccidiosis is the disease. So to prevent the coccidiosis, the coccidia, there's actually a vaccine for it now? I didn't know that. They have again, it's something that commercial hatcheries do now, where they give them something when they're very young in the first couple of days, and it helps stimulate their immunity, Like we get vaccines when we're really little and babies because our immune systems are so open, and it helps them develop immunity. It's not a foolproof preventative, but it really helps them be more resistant to coccidia. It's nice. It's good.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So let's continue. We're almost to the end of it. I see Ingrid now is just scrolling through.
Well, I want to, because they're talking amongst themselves, so I want to get to
which
the
I
questions.
love that they do that.
Yes.
Especially the more comments, it helps boost the show. So again, thank you guys. So again, here's your last chance. If you have any more questions, put it in there. Make sure it says question. We got maybe about 4 or 5 more minutes.
Yep.
And then Dr. Laurie Hess, I promise we'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time. I had a couple of my hen get frostbite when we had some extremely cold below zero weather. They seem to be fine, and my question is, how will this affect them when it's hot out this summer?
If they're fine now and it's past, it won't affect them at all, and they're probably fine. Frostbite happens, when it happens. So if you think your chickens have frostbite and they get it on their gizzards and they get it, on their extremities where they don't have a lot of protection, you don't want to put really hot water on it. You don't want to put cold water, obviously. You just want to put warm, gentle compress. If there's going to be a problem, that tissue there will turn black and will get crusty, and it's really nasty. And if you have that, then you need to see a vet because it has to be taken off. And then they could heal fine, but you don't want to leave that because it can become infected, and it's obviously really painful. I don't know, if you've had your fingers and toes exposed, it hurts. So yeah.
Real quick, someone says, make your duck house a floating duck house. It's a floating duck house, and to me that's one of the best duck houses. The tricky part is if they start laying eggs in it, how do you pull it in and let it back out? So if anyone is interested for that prototype, let me know. But I love seeing them floating out on the water. All right. Geez, Ingrid snagged that mouse from me like, yeah.
Well,
okay.
You know what happens when I give you the controls.
Well, I feel like I'm kind of to the point where I got to take over. Don says, I heard raw beans are toxic. Is that true?
Raw beans, it's not that they're toxic, but a lot of people think that with water they expand. When you sprout beans, they expand, and if a bird eats a lot of them, it can get into their proventriculus, their stomach, and expand and cause a lot of bloating. So it's not something we really like to feed. I should have mentioned that is something you don't want to give. It's a no-no.
Would it be the same thing with oatmeal? Because I know people say don't give them dry oatmeal because once it hits the water, it will. I mean,
I think a drop of oatmeal, like a little sprinkle, is probably okay, but a big lot of oatmeal does expand, and it can, oatmeal gets really hard. When you make it and you let it sit there and it sits in that bowl, it can be really, really hard. So it's not something you want to feed a ton of.
Right.
All right, so Fisher Matt Ryan now has asked twice, and he definitely deserves the question. How do you prevent poopy butt or pasty butt? But maybe it's not pasty butt as
he's talking about hens.
He's not
messy. No, the messy ones on hens.
But I'm assuming he's referring to adult hens.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. The adult hens hates cleaning those dingleberries. Funny, almost a T-shirt. I see where he's going with it. But yeah, I've seen that where it's like they got exploding diarrhea. I'm not sure if it's really.
Some of them do, and some of them don't. Like some of them go their whole
So
life
how do we prevent it?
Yeah, there's different reasons, obviously. I mean, diarrhea could be parasites, and if you see persistent diarrhea in a hen, or in more than one hens, then you might have parasites, and that's something, again, that I would recommend you take a sample and you have your vet check, because not all parasites are the same, and we don't use the same anti-parasitic drugs for all parasites. They're very specific. But remember, too, that as I described before, there's that vent, that opening to the cloaca, that big chamber where everything kind of dumps, including eggs and poop and everything else before it comes out. When chickens are laying, they will often, have that egg will block that cloaca, and they'll retain a lot of poop behind it. So until they lay that egg, there's a lot of poop in there. And then when the egg comes out, a lot of poop has been sitting in there, stored there for a little longer than it normally would. And then it comes out and it's kind of a mess, right? So if it's reproductive poop and it happens right after the egg, it could be totally normal. But if it's like all the time and you see it pasting up their butt, that's something that's not normal, and you should have that checked out.
Kathy asks, why would a chicken lay an egg when roosting at night? Our chicken camera caught a pullet laying off roost at 1 a.m. So 1 a.m., it's like, time to lay this egg. Is that normal?
Who knows? They do what they want to do. As long as it's a normal egg, doesn't matter. I mean, maybe they were, just not focused enough to
Yeah.
lay earlier on.
I've
There's no
had
wrong
some
way.
overnight eggs
Yeah.
that you find in the hemp, for sure.
Yeah, nothing wrong with when they laid. As long as it's a solid shell, it's not wrinkled, it's not shellless, I'm not worried.
Can chickens throw up, or is it really only one way in and one way out?
No, they can throw up, and they shouldn't throw up. And if they're throwing up a lot, then there's probably something going on in the crop. Or, as we talked all about egg binding, if you have a whole bunch of eggs stuck inside and they're in your oviduct inside your reproductive tract, and that's pushing on your stomach, your ventriculus and your proventriculus, it can cause you to have everything up, you come up the other way. So they can't throw up.
Can I have ventriculus tonight for dinner, please? Sounds so good. Nan just walked in. I mean, Danny already now I got my water. All right, yeah. So I didn't.
Gizzards.
Okay. Question. Yawning. I've seen my bantam do this twice in total. Her comb is red. She's still laying. Her poop looked good. It freaks me out when she does this. I didn't see the question there.
Well,
That's
the question sometimes, like when they like open their mouths, because they're not mouth breathers normally. So sometimes chickens will like open their mouth and look like they're yawning, and I think that's what she's referring to, because I've seen chickens do that.
I mean, an occasional yawn is not a big deal. If they're open mouth breathing, where they're like, gasping and their mouth is consistently open, I mean, that could be a sign of a reproductive problem. It could be a sign of pain. It could be something that's pressing on their airways. I mean, maybe they do have a bunch of eggs stuck in there, pressing on their airways, their lung, their trachea, their, all that stuff. So again, persistent open mouth breathing, not good. Have checked out. Occasional yawn, if they're otherwise seemingly fine, I wouldn't be really overly concerned.
I see a lot of thank yous.
Yes, people
Right now.
love. Thank you for joining us too.
All right, so this will be the last question. Thank you guys so much. Does DE help prevent internal parasites? So we've talked about this. Dr. Laurie, what do you say?
I think DE, diatomaceous earth, is better for external parasites. People eat it, believe it or not. There's human grade diatomaceous earth that people eat that supposedly has some effect. I think it's not the be all to end all. I mean, I've seen chickens that live with diatomaceous earth still get parasites. It doesn't hurt. But I think that keeping your coop clean, your run clean, spot cleaning, fresh water, fresh food, keeping your food off the ground, making sure that things are not crawling up into your feeders. Those are better ways to prevent than relying on diatomaceous earth.
Awesome. So as I was going to say, you guys are taking my thunder today. Dr. Laurie Hess, I don't know if you see all the comments coming in. This is probably one of the first times I've seen this many thank yous, and I can't thank you enough. So everyone, please give Dr. Laurie a huge thank you for your time being here. It was an absolute treat today. I hope we get to do this again.
Would love to.
Yeah, we'd love to absolutely do that. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for your business. Again, there is no bigger compliment than when a veterinarian, especially an expert with avian expert, got to get that one better, is a purchaser of one of your products, where we try to provide this product to solve the problems. And again, Ingrid is pointing to something, but I do want to make sure that everyone, I don't know what she's pointing to, but one of the things,
The name of the book.
Yes, so absolutely. So if you guys can, you're looking for some great reading material, tell us about the book, if you wouldn't mind, real quick.
Sure. It's a memoir. It's all the crazy stories. I've been a veterinarian for 30 years, and it's all the crazy stories of all the crazy animals. Some of them are really unbelievable. Some of them are really heartwarming and touching, but it's a memoir, and I think you'll be amused. It's an easy read.
Awesome. And what is the name of it?
It is called Unlikely Companions, The Adventures of an Exotic Animal Doctor.
Perfect. All right, we'll definitely put the link in.
We definitely will.
Awesome.
It'll be on it'll live on our website with our products we love.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No
Awesome.
problem. We appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very
You are the
much.
best. I
it's
can't wait till
really
we can
fun.
do
I love
this
it.
again. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Okay.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I love it when we learn stuff.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, that's what's important. It is critical that you learn. If you're in a business and you're not learning, you're failing. And that is one of the most important things. You cannot put a price tag on learning. And that's something that we preach all the time. I tell everyone, even when we made mistakes, you learn.
Yeah.
And, mistakes do cost money, but I guess it's perspective. If you learned, it's just you just can't put a price tag on it. So I absolutely love it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Looks like you guys did. I loved how so many people are taking the time to say thank you. That was absolutely awesome. What was the most important thing you felt that you learned?
Well, I didn't know that they're not taking in the calcium unless they get vitamin D. And it makes sense. I'm embarrassed that I didn't know because it is common sense, but it's nice to hear it articulated because it is important. And I wanted to ask if the solid roof run would cause an issue with that, but I don't think it would because the sun does come in on the sides. And you see the chickens like taking their little sun bath.
I thought about that. I thought about that, and we probably should. Maybe we can save it for next time. But again, free ranging, so important. I tell people all the time, yes, you can never have a big enough run, but nothing's more important than free ranging. However, what I love about our coops, because of how tall they are, they get the ability to have sunlight just like they would if they're at the edge of the forest or whatever. They have the ability to go and get sun. And think about what chickens do now in the middle of the day. They come in and get out of the sun. Mm-hmm. So, but if you got one of those really, really small coops that have a solid roof run, the chances of them getting the ability to have enough sunlight is not going to be there. So if they're not getting that vitamin D, they're not getting that bridge so the calcium can pass over that bridge and get into their system so they get the proper nutrients. So I agree. That was one of my things I took away from that. I was like,
I love that she said she didn't like the sand in the run.
Oh my gosh. Oh God. If I could, I didn't want to get a little too crazy, but that was huge because that is one that drives me nuts because there are so many people that will swear up and down they must be on sand. And here she just said even more reasons why it's actually a negative effect. Ingrid's looking at me like, Matt, I've been telling you that for years. And
I love that she encouraged healthy, natural living.
Yes.
Like we don't need to do a whole lot.
Yes, because that's the thing too I've seen, especially with Western medicine. And I know and she's wonderful. I know sometimes when you go into see a vet, I leave there thinking, oh my God, I'm the worst pet owner ever. Like they just hammer all this medicine, this and that. But it is about prevention. And if you just keep it natural, you don't have to always be treating. Especially, we got into in depth with the apple cider vinegar. Again, I'm just
really
like,
need to do it.
How many times do we tell people less is more? Just as long as you got the right setup, you don't have to keep doing all this stuff. Like you got to put, what's one of them? You got to put these herbs in the nesting material. Get out of here. Are you kidding me right now? But all right. I do have some things we got to say again. I know we're at 136.
Really?
I can I just interrupt before I forget? Suzanne, it's Ingrid.com. Stop it. It's Ingrid at carolinacoops.com. Just send me your address, shirt size, shirt preference.
Yes, I love that question. I thought it was a great question. All right, so here again, I just need to go on record, give you guys some updates. I don't get scared very easily, but I actually this doesn't scare me, but I'm aware that anytime you make a major change, there's going to be bumps in the road. We're doing everything we can to make sure the transition is as smooth as possible. And there have been some customers that thank you for paying attention. Yes, we are going to be switching to the acre. The decision has been made. This material has been absolutely awesome. We in the marketing department, Ingrid, Paul, it's time. We have got to start getting some information out there so we can teach customers why we're switching to this so they can learn more about it. Every day, it's like we learn something new about this acre material that's just been absolutely amazing. So we are definitely making the right move, but it is a lot more expensive. What we are doing, as always, is trying to make sure we don't have to increase prices if we don't have to. There have been many situations, so many things that we have learned by switching all to acre. It's actually going to save a lot on labor. And if we're able to reduce the labor, that keeps the cost down. So hopefully it ends up being a wash. But I can tell you, if you are right now listening to this show, February 9th, 2024, if it's 2026, okay, you're a little late, but we are going to switch to this. And it's how we switch and when we switch is going to be a little bit tricky, but it is going to happen. And you will always, how can I say this without getting yelled at? Here's one of the things that we need to hear what people think. This is stainable, and it does kind of look like wood. From a distance, you would think it's wood. But if you are someone that wants that all-natural wood look with the grain and you want to switch to it, take your shot. You will always have the option to go to a real lumber. I don't know if we're going to keep the 3/8 ply in stock. It would just go to what we do now with all the Craftsman coops. It would be true solid board and bat. So that will still be an option.
Yeah, so somebody had asked, wait, no more Douglas fir. That's not.
No.
We're still going to have the Douglas fir
For framing.
Great. Yeah. So I gotta make sure I mention that. Yes, the bones, the Douglas fir, you don't get any better than this. Are you kidding me? This stuff is great. So we're going to keep this, but we're going to be switching all to acre for the siding, for the trim.
And the high density.
And this is going to replace the high density. I actually thought that's where people were going to freak out the most or not. This is going to work just like high density. High density, I've said it for years, is way overkill, but it's the psychological part of it. This is completely waterproof. This cannot rot. Termites will not try to eat it. It is almost, again, too good to be true, but because we're buying in sheet goods, it's a game changer in production. And it is 51% rice hull, 35% PVC, and then the rest is the magical ingredients. So it is meant to last a lifetime.
And Elle says it stains very nicely. It really soaks it up, but you definitely need 2 coats, but she says it stains very nicely.
And you do need certain types of stain, but yes, because of how consistent it is, if you stain softwood, it's going to get blotchy. I haven't stained acre yet. I don't think we have.
I thought you did everything to it. Chewed
Well,
it.
it was a solid stain.
We might
Sprayed
have.
it.
We actually might have stained. Now, yeah, I'm picturing it.
I don't know
but
if it was like a natural stain.
I think we did, and we were like, wow, that actually looks good. I don't know. We've done so much. I mean, 3 years now we've been testing this material. It's just been absolutely phenomenal. So I just want, again, public service announcement. We will be switching to this. If you are in the market for a chicken coop and you're like, man, I definitely want the acre, let your salesperson know because then I don't know when the switch is going to be.
It's soon, in the next few months.
Yeah, the manufacturer said they will rush it. So it's just going to be an interesting transition.
So somebody asked if it would warp the acre.
So, okay.
It's very stable.
It's a very stable material. But when we're talking about warping, you can have, all the way down to the thinnest we're going to have is 3/8. This is 1/2 inch here. But it can bow and move. But when you're building things, you make it so that it holds it true. So that's not going to be an issue. So hopefully that makes sense. It's actually been way more stable than real wood. It's been absolutely incredible.
Do you have anything else to get off your chest?
I feel like there is. This has been one hell of a week, and there was.
You say that every week.
Well, listen. So Danny's been on a couple shows. Quickly, this and that. She's been answering all the phones. She's ready to step into her long-time permanent job, purchasing, which is going to help us out tremendously. So we have a new person that's going to be answering the phones next week. Can't wait to get started on that. So that is coming. I hope that's going to help us. And I'm really hoping to get back to doing more on social media. We, ever since Alabama took our last social media person, I'm hoping that's going to change. So any ideas out there, please let us know. Right, guys?
Right. And if you want to do a call out again for reluctant spouse videos.
Oh, so I was going to say that. I was going to end with that. I do love that Fish and Matt Ryan, I don't know if I should say this. He said his wife's more than welcome to do it, but only if we do an interview with them. And that's ultimately, I think, what we should do, is that if you had a reluctant spouse and then you have a story that you would like to share with us, please send us a video to Ingrid.com. And
oh my God. You better buy that.
We should at least check to see what it is.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We want to do a video of talking about the reluctant spouse. I would love to share some true stories, but we're going to have to go through, I hope we get a lot of them, and then we'll pick maybe like 5 or 6 or 12 of them. And then eventually, do that interview with them, recorded probably.
And that's Ingrid at carolinacoops.com.
Or, somebody have sent them through Facebook. The best way would really be to upload them to like a Google Drive and send me a link, because a good file is going to be a big file, and you usually can't email that, and it will come as a link, and then we can download it, and that would be the best. But if you want to just, however you want to get like your...
Right, hold on. You know what? And Chopper says, tell my husband, if we have the reluctant spouse right now, let's do that.
Maybe we can convince them.
Oh my God.
That's your jam, isn't it?
I love it. Love it. Are you kidding me? I would actually love to maybe even do that story. It's like, okay, let's come on the show. Tell us what you're reluctant about. But anyways, okay. Yeah, it is 1:43. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We will see you next week, right?
That's right.
because I know someone's planning a birthday getaway, but next week is someone's birthday. So
I didn't.
yeah, I was thought we'd play the game. Can you guess Kristen's age? Because I know no one's going to get it right. I mean it as a compliment. Don't take that wrong. Don't get mad at me, but want to make sure we don't miss next week's show.
Okay.
All right. What's going on for next week's show, speaking of it?
I don't know.
No idea.
I'm lucky I got through this week.
This was such a fun show. All right, well, we'll see you guys next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Go San Fran. We're going to root for San Fran. I'm sick and tired of seeing the Chiefs win. Later.